Hello everyone, Lisa here to present to you this week your week 3 activities for web design online. And I think we'll start here in the home page area, and we'll click over here in coursework and go into the week 3 activities. Okay. So just let me go back one here. If you haven't already noticed, I tried to present a list outside of week 3 for you so that before you go ahead and commit to the folder and go in and look at all the materials, you can actually read through what is due for that week. So pretty much it's the same as last week, except for different types of sections you'll be reviewing in Linda, and you'll be reading different areas of the textbook, but you have a reading and discussion assignment. I'm posting this lecture. That's what I'm doing here, and this is your week 3 classroom activities overview. And then in Linda, you have the section on designing websites for Photoshop to Dreamweaver. You'll be continuing with that section. And then you have an area for your week 3 problems and solutions. So let's go ahead and jump inside there. And this week in your readings, you'll be looking over the pages on page structure and page design. And there's some really great information in this section of your textbook. And for all of you designers out there, you're going to love this because it really kind of connects all of the design theory and principles to web design and how to make a great web page in terms of design. So those of you without the design background, this will be the information you'll be hearing of for the first time. So again, a very useful information to help you make better page designs as well. I have your assigned questions down below, so you can go ahead and look up your name and get on those questions for this week. For the most part, most of you submitted your work from last week. However, there's still a lot of outstanding students who haven't submitted their work from last week, so you're going to need to jump in there and get on that right away. It's really a horrific thing to get too behind in an online class, because online classes, you're sort of out there in cyberspace, and if you get too far behind, you may never be able to catch up. So heed my warnings and get in there and get your work finished up and submitted. I am working through the grading this week. Hopefully I'm going to have that completed and up to speed by next week. Your second assignment in here is the lynda.com tutorials. Now I've changed up a little bit this week, and for the Lynda, you're still required to go and watch those tutorials, but you're not required to actually submit any exercise files this week. What I want you to focus on for these tutorials is watching them. And the reason for that is what I'm trying to do with last week's tutorials and this week's tutorials is sort of paint a picture for you of how the process for web design works. And it's almost impossible to kind of do in 1 week, and there's really no tutorial in Lynda that kind of goes through it exactly how I would like to present it to you. So that's why we've kind of had to have some tutorials in one section and other tutorials in another module and so on. We've been jumping around, but what I'm trying to do for you is paint a picture. So the picture I'm trying to paint for you is in Photoshop, as directed in your tutorials. In the mock-up section, you create all your graphics. So last week you went over how to create this particular page here in your tutorials, and it took you through the steps of creating this in Photoshop. Talked about, you know, colors and layers and positioning things, guides and such, and it sort of gave you an idea of how we're going to utilize Photoshop to put our design together. However, what we do in Photoshop, portions of that we're going to use in our Dreamweaver section of the class, and then portions of that are just created in Photoshop for viewing purposes only. Like, for instance, looking at this page right here, all of the graphics, such as the header, the pictures, these little icons down here, the bullet points, those are all things we're going to pull from our Photoshop document and use in our Dreamweaver workup. However, things like text, like this text here, headlines, buttons and such, we're going to recreate those in Dreamweaver as HTML and CSS. So I just want you to understand, we will not be doing any text content in Photoshop. Most of what you're going to extract out of Photoshop will be more image related, such as, you know, photos and header banners and anything that has any custom graphics in it. Everything else that's text related will be reset in Dreamweaver once you get over there and start putting your pages together. So this week's tutorials in Linda describe that to you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump back here to Linda. And here is the module you're working on, designing websites for Photoshop to Dreamweaver. And this week's tutorials are optimizing for web and creating Dreamweaver templates. Those are the two sections. Now the optimizing for web kind of goes through and talks about how you're going to take this Photoshop page and actually slice out the areas that you're going to use in Dreamweaver. So it kind of goes through how to slice out specific areas of this mock-up and export them out as either JPEG, GIF, or PNG file format. Okay, so that's what that section in Linda, this optimizing web graphics, goes over. In addition, this second section, which is section 6, this will get into all of the foundation knowledge that you're going to need to kind of get your head around once you have created your mock-up in Photoshop and saved out all your slices. Then you will take those graphics into Dreamweaver, and that's where you're going to make web pages from. So it's almost impossible to really teach a web design class without understanding how to generate the graphics, which is using Photoshop, and then in turn how to export those graphics out in a file format that is useful for the web, and then to take those graphics and lay them out in a page using the web language HTML and CSS. And that's what Dreamweaver is going to do for us. So that's the reason why we're doing Linda, because we're actually using two big software programs in order to put a web page together. Photoshop and Dreamweaver being two biggies, industry standards in putting web pages together. Okay, so the second section is it's pretty complex and it's pretty dense, which is why I'm not requiring you to submit exercise files, because I'm a little fearful that if you get too involved with these exercise files on this section that you may never get them finished in time to turn them in. So what I would prefer for you to do is to watch the tutorials. Now, I will still be grading you on your viewing of the tutorials. So going back here to, where was I? Over here to the online classroom. I've got the assignment week 3 up here, and sorry, I completely forgot what I was talking about. That happens to us professors every now and then. I have a blurb at the top that explains what I'm doing this week. It says basically, for week 3, it is optional to submit exercise files. You are still required to watch all the assigned videos, but you do not have to submit exercise files for a grade. Your grade will be based on your viewing report in Linda only. So basically how I'll be grading you for week 3 is in Linda. When you watch a tutorial, I have access to these reports here. So when I pull up your class, which is right here, and I hit submit, all of your names come up here, and I go under your name. Let's just say I go under Susan's name here, and I can click and I can look and see all the tutorials that she's watched. I can also look at the times that she's watched them and for how long, so I can verify that you've watched all the tutorials from start to finish and such. That's what I'll be grading you on for week 3, is your viewing time in Lynda and whether or not you went through all the tutorials. So going back to Blackboard here. So that's basically what I'm saying here is your grade will be based on your viewing report in Lynda only. What is most important this week is that you watch the process you will go through in Dreamweaver to create pages. Eventually, later in the class, you will be executing all the techniques you watch in the videos, but not yet. I merely want you to see the process you will go through to create web pages. So that's basically why I have you watching these, is because the process is so lengthy, because you spend a good amount of time in Photoshop creating the graphics, and then another large amount of time in Dreamweaver actually putting the pages together. I want you to see that entire process before you delve in and we kind of pick it apart individually. Now I gave you, some tutorials in the beginning about, how to get started in Photoshop and such, so you should have a good feel for what is required of you in Photoshop and creating a mock-up, and then taking that mock-up, slicing it up, and bringing that mock-up into Dreamweaver. So back here to Photoshop. So this is the mock-up, which you will watch in the tutorial, and actually you can create this one if you'd like. And again, this is optional. If you want to actually go through and execute all the techniques in the exercises, you can by all means go ahead and do that, and you can submit those to me, or you could not submit those. It's up to you, and it's optional. I'm not grading you on them, so it's an optional thing this week. What I am grading you on is your viewing. So back here in Dreamweaver, I brought up a couple files, and I thought it was great the way it was explained in the tutorial. Let me go ahead and get some of these boxes out of the way here. Close this so we can kind of see this. I thought it was great how it was explained in the tutorial, how you need to kind of section out these different areas of your web page. So going back again, always going back to the design mock-up in Photoshop, looking at the top section as the header, the middle section as the content, and then the bottom section as the footer, and those areas being sectioned off here in Dreamweaver before you even get started in putting your images in and such. You kind of get your structure set up. And again, next week we're going to be going over HTML specific and some of the tags that you're going to need to know and where those tags go and how it all relates. But I wanted you to see the visual of it before we actually delve into the code, which we're going to start that next week. So just so you know, I'll be posting that here for next week at the end of the week sometime. But also what's interesting enough is creating the web page, and now here is the final page that you're going to see in your tutorials as you watch this week. This actual page will come alive in Dreamweaver, and it'll be coded, and here is your code over here, all of the code that it took to put this web page together. And if you look back here at the Photoshop document, it pretty much mimics most of what you see here in Photoshop. Now, this text, this text, all your navigation, all this text down here, this is all, as you can kind of see, this is all done in Dreamweaver. All this text is added here in Dreamweaver and then styled in CSS. Okay. So just so you know, even though you do add it to the Photoshop file, you'll be recreating it in here in Dreamweaver. And then, hence taking this to the web, this page to the web, here is your final execution, is looking at that HTML page on the internet. So that's kind of what I wanted you to see this week, is the entire process, so that you can sort of get your head around, okay, this is what we're going to do in here. Now let's take it apart and look at each individual section and how to go about doing that. I won't be spending too much more time on the Photoshop side of things, because I gave you the overview in week 1 of some of the specifics in terms of core concepts of Photoshop, working with colors, working with layers. You'll watch the section this week on creating a mock-up, or I'm sorry, that was last week, creating the mock-up in Photoshop and specifics related to that. So now from here on forward, this week and on, we're going to be dealing with either Dreamweaver or HTML or CSS. So you're going to learn about those individual coding, I would say, languages to put web pages together. So I don't want to take up all that much time going over anything else other than I wanted to make sure that you didn't miss that blurb that I added in today, because I decided after I looked at those tutorials and thought about it, I thought, you know, these exercises and this week's tutorials could be quite lengthy, and I don't want you to get overwhelmed and have you go crazy. So if you can just view them and kind of store that information away, we're going to get back to it, but I wanted you to see the whole picture. That was mainly what I was interested in this week. Okay? If you have any questions or problems or anything else for this week, I urge you to post those questions in the Week 3 Problems and Solutions area. And other than that, again, I want to remind you that this Thursday is the open lab from 5 to 7, in which you can talk to me face-to-face about your progress in the class, ask me questions, and review any materials that you're stuck on in the course. So don't forget about those Thursday open lab hours. Other than that, I guess happy dream weavering, and we'll talk to you soon.